Okay, so take out your 7.4 worksheet, and there's a few problems that I want to go over just in general to make sure that you understand them. Remember, you don't have a 7.4 quiz today. You're going to do more practice with it today. And then on Monday, we will take the quiz for this. So pause if you need to at any time. So the first one I want to go over is number 3. And this one, you've got a 90 and a 60, and so this is a 30, 60, 90. And so they gave you the long leg, okay? And so I know a lot of you use formulas. I'm going to do the box method for this one just because it's kind of that shortcut thing we had talked about. So we've got 30, 60, 90, x radical 3 and 2x. Okay, and they gave you 15. And 15 is across from the 60, so I'm going to put that in the 60-degree column. Now notice this is supposed to have radical 3 in it, and it doesn't, so that means that this will have radical 3 in it. And we're moving backwards, so we would take 15 divided by 3, which gives us the number in front. So that's 5 radical 3. And then this is our x here, and we're supposed to double that to get the hypotenuse, which is across from the 90. So remember, you times by 2, and 2 is not under the radical, so you can only multiply it by that 5. So that becomes 10 radical 3. Now we have to decide which answer is which. So then when we look here, y is across from this would be the 30-degree angle. So then I look in the 30-degree angle column, and y is 5 radical 3. And then I need x, which is across from the 90. It's the hypotenuse, so I look in the 90-degree column, and so that means that's 10 radical 3. But remember, it doesn't always match. The x here doesn't always match the x in there, because we could use any variable in there. Okay, the next one I want to look at is number 6. And so on this one, they didn't mark the angles, but this is an isosceles right triangle, and remember then that's your 45, 45, 90. And so they gave you the hypotenuse. So 30, 60, 90, x radical 3, and 2x. Oh, I don't even know why I just wrote that. Because this is a 45, 45, 90. And that one is x radical. So they give you 14, and that's across from the 90. That is the hypotenuse, so 14 goes there. It's supposed to have radical 2, and it doesn't. So then that means the legs will have the radical 2. So we're going backwards. 14 divided by 2 is 7. And remember, the legs in an isosceles right triangle, or the 45, 45, 90 are the same. So 7 radical 2, 7 radical 2. Okay. The next one I want to go over is number 10. And so number 10 and number 11, you had to think a little bit. So they said find the value of x, and we have square ABCD. So this is a square, so you have to think, what do you know about a square? Well, we know all the sides are congruent in a square, and all the angles are right angles in a square. That's your background knowledge about squares. And so I'm going to erase some of this. So I'm just looking at this, and notice we have, when you draw on this diagonal, we have an isosceles right triangle. This is 7, that means this is 7. And so when you do your formula or you do the box method, you would get 7 radical 2 for x, because that's the hypotenuse. And that's it. So every square, when you draw in the diagonal, just one of the diagonals, it makes 2 isosceles right triangles. And so it's a 45, 45, 90 every time. And then you use that to find the diagonal or the side or whatever it is they give you and they want you to find. For the equilateral triangle, so number 11, not writing. Here we go. Number 11 says we have an equilateral triangle ABC, which is this bigger one. So I know all three of these sides are congruent. And remember, that also told us that this angle, and this angle all has to be congruent. And more specifically, we could figure out what those degrees are. So what would the degrees, what were the angle measures of all of the angles in an equilateral triangle? Whoa. It's supposed to be 60 degrees. So let me erase some of this other stuff so we don't need the side lengths. But notice if this angle C is 60, I've got a 90 here, so that means this would be a 30-degree angle. You just did the math for this triangle, so you have a 30, 60, 90, and they gave you the hypotenuse. So in a 30, 60, 90, x radical 3 and 2x. They gave you the hypotenuse here because that's the side across from 90, so 4 goes there. Cut that in half to get the short leg, so the short leg right there is 2. And then you take that, and your long leg, which is across from the 60, is 2 radical 3. Okay, so that's how you find those. Every equilateral triangle, when you draw in this perpendicular segment, it's going to create two 30, 60, 90 triangles. And then every time you have the square with the diagonal drawn in, it makes two isosceles right triangles. Okay? All right, so that's it for the worksheet. So you're going to do a review game with Mrs. Nelson. And so go ahead and take out a blank piece of paper, and you will turn this piece of paper in for credit, and a pencil. And if you want a calculator out, you can have one, although these are small enough numbers you may not need that. And then wait for further instructions. So piece of paper, pencil, put your name on the piece of paper, and if you want a calculator, you can have that. All right. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, you should have your piece of paper, pencil, and a calculator if you want it, is we're going to do something I call row races. So Mrs. Nelson is going to split you into groups here in a moment. And when she does that, that is going to be your team. And what's going to happen is each member of your team at some point is going to be answering a question for your group. So you will go up and you'll stand in front of Mrs. Nelson, and she'll give you a whiteboard, a mini whiteboard, and a marker. And I will change the question and put it up on and project it up there. And then you're going to work out that problem. Whoever gets it right first, so you have to work it out on your board and show it, turn it and show it to Mrs. Nelson. Whoever gets the answers right first earns 3 points for their team. Whomever gets it right second gets 2 points for their team. And even if you finish in last place, that's okay. You still earn 1 point. As long as you get the right answer, you still earn 1 point for your team. Okay? So you'll work it out, get your answer, show it. Now, let's say you answer first, but you are wrong. You answer first and you are wrong, then you cannot answer again until the other two players have answered. Okay, so you got to be careful. You want to be fast, but you need to be efficient, because if you get it wrong, then you cannot answer again. You can still work it out and put answers on your board, but Mrs. Nelson cannot check it again until everybody else has answered once. And then if somebody else is wrong, or if they get it right or whatever, then after they've answered, you can answer again. Okay? Now, if you get stuck, somebody from your team can come help you only after everybody has tried answering first. Okay, so you can't get some help right away. You've got to sit and think about it and try and figure out the problem. These are all from section 7.4 with your 30, 60, 90s and your 45, 45, 90s. Okay. All right, so she's going to put you in groups, and then whoever number 1 is on in each team, you guys are going head to head. Whoever's number 2 in all the teams, going head to head, etc. And if somebody's absent, that's okay. Then we'll just We'll just move everybody up one in that team. Okay? All right, so go ahead and pause it, and you'll get in your teams, and then we'll get rolling. You can start it up when you're ready again. All right, so you're in your teams. So the first person in each group needs to come up, get your whiteboard and marker. And I'm going to click the problem over in just a moment here, and then you will have to work on it, okay? And then as soon as I flip it and the problem shows up, Mrs. Nelson, please pause it so they can work it out, and then play it when everybody's answered and gotten their points. And then I will show you all the right answers, you know, how to work out the answers, because you'll have the list of answers to see if you're right or not. But then we'll go over it in case there were some people in the audience or people that were answering it that didn't know what they were doing or got stuck. Okay? All right, so the first group should be up. Ready, set, go. Go ahead and pause it. Okay, so you're playing it, everybody's answered it. So they gave you the short leg, because it's across from 30 and a 30, 60, 90. And so then to get the long leg, let's see, where is it? Long leg, we take this short leg and multiply by radical 3. So you had 2 radical 3 there. And then to get the hypotenuse, you're going to multiply the short leg by 2 and get 4. Okay, good job. All right, change my color and go ahead and switch out. So whoever is supposed to be next on each team, come on down. Go ahead and pause it while you can pause it to wait for them to come up. Okay, and ready, set, go. Pause it again. Okay, so it's a 45, 45, 90 this time, and they gave you one of the legs, so the other leg has to be the same too. And the hypotenuse is y, so you take the leg times square root of 2. Okay, good job. All right, switch it out. Next group up, one from each team. All right, ready, set, go. All right, so everybody should have answered, otherwise you need to pause it. And they gave you the hypotenuse this time. So the short leg, you can get to the short leg from the hypotenuse by dividing by 2. So 18 divided by 2 is 9. And then you have the short leg now, so you can get the long leg, which will be 9 radical 3. You take the short leg times radical 3. All right, switch them out. All right, ready, set, go. All right, so if you need to, you can pause it. We've got a 45, 45, 90 again. So x and 18 are the legs. So that's going to be 18 because the legs have to be congruent in the 45, 45, 90. And the hypotenuse then is the leg times radical 2. Good job. All right, switch them out. Ready, set, go. All right, if you're not done yet, you can pause it. All right, this time again, we have a 45, 45, 90. So I'm going to use the box method on this one. 30, 60, 90, x radical 3, 2x. So then they gave you the hypotenuse, which is 6. So that goes in the 90-degree column. So 2 times x is 6, which means x has to be 3. So that's your short leg. And then when you come over here, take this short leg and times it by radical 3. And then when you come down here, oh my gosh, I did it again with the 45, 45, 90. And put 30, 60, 90 instead. I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm sure you guys are all snickering at me right now. All right, 45, 45, 90, which is x radical 2. So the hypotenuse, that's 6. That's supposed to have radical 2 and it does not. So that means this has radical 2. And then 6 divided by 2 is 3, and both legs have to be the same. So that means both x and y were 3 radical 2. It's funny, I put it right on my paper, but then I just didn't put the right thing here. All right, so switch out. Ready, set, go. All right. If you need to pause it, you can. We're going to go over it. So on this one, you've got your 30, 60, 90 for real this time. 30, 60, 90, x radical 3, 2x. All right, so they gave you this time the side across from the 60, which is the long leg, and they told you that's 12. Now the long leg is supposed to have radical 3 and it does not, so this will have radical 3. And then 12 divided by 3 is 4, gives you the number in front, and we talked about the math yesterday about why that works. And then you take this and double it, multiply by 2, so 4, you have to multiply the 4 and the 2 together to get 8, but the radical 3 stays the same. You can't multiply that 2 inside the radical. So back here, y is the short leg, so that's across from the 30, so that's 4 radical 3. And x is the hypotenuse, so that's 8 radical 3. Good job. All right, switch out. Ready, set, go. All right, if you need to pause. We've got this time a 30, 60, 90 again, and they gave you the hypotenuse. So we can go to the short leg. If you cut the hypotenuse in half, that gives you the short leg. And now that we have the short leg, if you're using the formulas or the box, then we take the short leg times radical 3 to get the long leg, which is across from the 60. Good job. All right, switch out. Ready, set, go. All right. Pause if you need to. We've got a 45, 45, 90, and they gave you the hypotenuse. So we've got x radical 2, and they gave you the hypotenuse is 9. Now it's supposed to have radical 2 and it doesn't, so these will have radical 2. So we do 9 divided by 2, and that is 4.5, but remember, no decimals. So we would just put 9/2 radical 2. And then this leg also has to be the same. So both x and y are 9/2 radical 2, or you can write it as 9 radical 2 all over 2. That also works. Or you could just write 9/2 with the radical 2 sitting next to it. Okay, all right, switch it out. Ready, set, go. Okay, the answer to these, they gave you a 45, 45, 90 again. Maybe it's not drawing. There we go. So 45, 45, 90, which is x radical 2. They told you the hypotenuse was 18. It's supposed to have a radical 2 and it doesn't. So put the radical 2 there. 18 divided by 2 is 9, and a 45, 45, 90 though. So 9 radical 2 is what you should have for this. Okay, all right, switch it out. Ready, set, go. All right, so this one is a 30, 60, 90. This one might have been a little tough. And we know we've got x radical 3 and 2x. This is the 60-degree angle, so that means they gave you the long leg. So I put 8 in the 60-degree column, or 8 is your long leg if you're using the formulas. Okay, so it's supposed to have radical 3 and it doesn't, so that tells you this has radical 3 in it. And we do 8 divided by 3 to get the coefficient in front, but it's not divisible even, so we're going to leave it as a fraction as 8/3 radical 3. Now we're supposed to take this and times it by 2. Well, if I times by 2, make 2 a fraction, 2/1. So then that's going to be 16/3 radical 3. Or you can write it as 16 radical 3 all over 3 if you want. And you can write this as 8 radical 3 all over 3. Whichever way you want to write that. Okay. All right, switch them out. Ready, set, go. All right, so on this one, you have a 45, 45, 90 again, which is x radical 2. They gave you the hypotenuse, 16, so that goes there. Remember, it's supposed to have a radical 2 and it doesn't. So radical 2 will show up here. 16 divided by 2 does give you a whole number 8. And since it's a 45, 45, 90, the two legs have to be the same. Good. All right, switch it out again. Ready, set, go. All right, answer time. So 30, 60, 90, this is the straightforward one where they gave you the short leg. So with the formulas, once you have the short leg, it's the key to all of the formulas. So you do short leg times radical 3 to get the long leg. So that's 10 radical 3. And it's short leg times hypotenuse, or I'm sorry, short leg times 2 to get the hypotenuse, which is 20. All right, switch them up. We got 3 more problems. Ready, set, go. All right, answer time. So we have a 45, 45, 90. This is also one of the straightforward cases. The legs have to be congruent, so that means that y equals 9, and the hypotenuse is the leg times radical 2. So x equals 9 radical 2. All right, switch them out. Ready, set, go. All right, answer time. So again, 45, 45, 90. The legs have to be the same, so that means x equals 1. And then the y, which is your hypotenuse, is going to be the leg times radical 2. So you could write 1 radical 2 or just radical 2. Typically, we just write radical 2 without the 1 in front. One coefficients get to be invisible. All right, one more problem. Switch it out. Ready, set, go. Okay, answer time. So this one is the 45, 45, 90 again. Which is x radical 2. They gave you the hypotenuse and told you it's 20. That's the side across from the 90. That's supposed to have radical 2 and it doesn't. So this has radical 2. 20 divided by 2 is 10. And since it's a 45, 45, 90, they're both the same. All right, Mrs. Nelson, let's add up the points and see who the winner is. And then let me know right in my notes who the team that won was. Hope you guys had fun. All right, your assignment is listed on the OneNote for section 7.4, day 2. So here is the assignment that's listed on the assignment guide for 7.4, day 2. Starts on page 461, do 3 through 10, and then 13 through 18. That'll give you more practice so that you're ready for your quiz on Monday over section 7.4, special right triangles, 45, 45, 90s, and 30, 60, 90s. The answer key is posted on Schoology to make sure that you're doing them correctly. Okay? Thanks, guys. Work the rest of the block on this assignment.